A new SAT aims to realign with schoolwork by Tamar Lewin. Saying its college admissions exams do not focus enough on the important academic skills, the College Board announced on Wednesday a fundamental rethinking of the SAT, ending the long-standing penalty for guessing wrong, cutting obscure vocabulary words, and making the essay optional. The president of the College Board, David Coleman, criticized his own test, the SAT, and its main rival, the ACT, saying that both had become disconnected from the work of our high schools. In addition, Mr. Coleman announced programs to help low-income students who will now be given fee waivers, allowing them to apply to 4 colleges at no charge. And even before the new exam was introduced in the spring of 2016, the College Board, in partnership with Khan Academy, will offer free online practice problems and instructional videos showing how to solve them. The changes are extensive. The SAT's rarefied vocabulary challenges will be replaced by words that are common in college courses, like empirical and synthesis. The math questions, now scattered across many topics, will focus more narrowly on linear equations, functions, and proportional thinking. The use of a calculator will no longer be allowed on some sections. The new exam will be available on paper and computer, and the scoring will revert to the old 1600-point scale from 2400, with top scores of 800 on math and 800 on what will now be called evidence-based reading and writing. The optional essay, which strong writers may choose to do, will have a separate score. Once the preeminent college admissions exam, the SAT has lost ground to the ACT, which is based more directly on high school curriculums and is now taken by a slightly higher number of students. Last year, 1.8 million students took the ACT and 1.7 million the SAT. The new SAT will not quell all criticism of standardized tests. Critics have long pointed out, and Mr. Coleman admits, that high school grades are a better predictor of college success than standardized test scores. More colleges have in recent years become test optional, allowing students to forego the exams and submit their grades, transcripts, and perhaps a graded paper. For many students, Mr. Coleman said, the tests are mysterious and filled with unproductive anxiety. And, he acknowledged, they inspire little respect from classroom teachers. Only 20%, he said, see the college admissions test as a fair measure of the work their students have done. Mr. Coleman came to the College Board in 2012 from a job as an architect of the Common Core curriculum standards, which set out the content that students must master at each level and are now making their way into school. He announced plans to revise the SAT a year ago and almost from the start expressed dissatisfaction with the essay that was added in 2005. He said that he also wanted to make the test reflect more closely what students did in high school, and perhaps, most important, rein in the intense coaching and tutoring on how to take the test that often gave affluent students an advantage. It is time for the College Board to say in a clearer voice that the culture and practice of costly test preparation that has arisen around admissions exams drives the perception of inequality and injustice in our country, Mr. Coleman said Wednesday. It may not be our fault, but it is our problem. While test preparation companies said the SAT was moving in the right direction, with more openness and more free online test preparation, the changes were unlikely to diminish the demand for their services. People will always want an edge, said Seppi Basili, a vice president of Kaplan Test Prep, and test changes always spur demand. The suggested changes were well received among many educators, but Mr. Coleman's comments about the ACT draw harsh words from an executive of that company. David Coleman is not a spokesman for the ACT, and I acknowledge his political gamemanship, but I don't appreciate it, said John Erickson, president of ACT's Education Division. It seems like they're mostly following what we've already done. Philip Ballinger, the director of undergraduate admissions at the University of Washington, said he admired Mr. Coleman's heartfelt, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead approach to approving the SAT and appreciated the effort to tame the test prep industry. It's absurd, and that's the nicest thing I can call it, how much test prep has grown and how guilt-ridden parents have become about trying to prepare their kids for the test, Mr. Ballinger said. If this helps test prep become learning, not gaming, well shoot, that's great. Some changes will make the new SAT more like the ACT, which for the last 2 years has outpaced the SAT in test takers. 13 states administer the ACT to all public high school juniors, and 3 more are planning to do so. The ACT has no guessing penalty, and its essay is optional. It also includes a science section, and while the SAT is not adding one, the redesigned reading test will include a science passage. But beyond the particulars, Mr. Coleman emphasized that the 3-hour exam, 3 hours and 50 minutes with the essay, had been redesigned with an eye toward reinforcing the skills and evidence-based thinking that the students should be learning in high school, and moving away from a need for test-taking tricks and strategies. Sometimes, students will be asked not just to select the right answer, but to justify it by choosing their quotation from a text that provides the best supporting evidence for the answer. The revised essay, in particular, will shift in that direction. Students now write about their experiences and opinions, with no penalty for incorrect assertions, even egregiously wrong ones. In the future, though, students will receive a source document and be asked to analyze it for its use of evidence, reasoning, and persuasive or stylistic technique. The text will be different on each exam, but the essay task will remain constant. The required essay never entirely caught on with college admissions officers. Many never figured the score into the admissions decision and looked at the actual essays only rarely, as a raw writing sample to help detect how much parents, consultants, and counselors had edited and polished the essay submitted with the application. The key changes. These will be among the changes in the new SAT starting in the spring of 2016. Instead of arcane SAT words, the vocabulary definitions on the new exam will be of words commonly used in college courses, such as synthesis and empirical. The essay, required since 2005, will become optional. Those who choose to write an essay will be asked to read a passage and analyze the ways its authors used evidence, reasoning, and stylistic elements to build an argument. The guessing penalty, in which points are deducted for incorrect answers, will be eliminated. The overall scoring will return to the old 1,600-point scale, based on a top score of 800 in reading and math. The essay will have a separate score. Math questions will focus on 3 areas: linear equations, complex equations or functions, and ratios, percentages, and proportional reasoning. Calculators will be permitted only on part of the math section. Every exam will include, in the reading and writing section, source documents from a broad range of disciplines, including science and social studies, and on some questions, students will be asked to select the quotation from the text that supports the answer they have chosen. Every exam will include a reading passage, either from one of the nation's founding documents, such as the Declaration of Independence or the Bill of Rights, or from one of the important discussions of such texts, such as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. Need for full-day kindergarten is lost in pre-K debate, critics say, by Al Baker, Huntington, New York. Jennifer Simon has paid thousands of dollars for private preschool, she said, and it was worth every penny. Now her son Daniel is in public school kindergarten, and it costs nothing. But she cannot send him to school until midday because Huntington is one of the 26 districts in New York State that offer only half-day kindergarten to a majority of their students. Like other parents of kindergartners here, she said she had no quarrel with offering free full-day pre-kindergarten to all children in the state. But, Miss Simon said, she and other parents in Huntington were wondering, why are we overlooking kindergarten? Kindergarten, being half-day, is difficult for many families, she said. A significant expansion of full-day preschool in the state is likely in the coming years, though a fight continues between Governor Andrew Cuomo and Mayor Bill de Blasio over the best way to pay for it. Left unsaid, however, is that 7,100 students, or 4% of New York's kindergartens, are now in school for only about 3 hours a day, according to the state education department. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but it's comical to skip over a first step, which is solidifying kindergarten, said Dr. L. Oliver Robinson, the superintendent of the schools outside Saratoga, where 568 children attend half-day kindergarten. Many students do not enter the public schools until first grade, their parents choosing to pay for private full-day kindergarten or simply to keep them at home. The analogy that I use is that this whole issue is like people debating the color of the bathroom while the house is burning down, Dr. Robinson said. The issue is not easily resolved. The governor has offered to use state money to pay for full-day pre-kindergarten in any district that wants it. But outside New York City, which already has full-day kindergarten, most school funding comes from local property taxes. Districts without full-day kindergarten are typically not poor enough to qualify for enhanced federal funding, but also face resistance to raising property taxes substantially, especially now that the state law limits how much they can increase those taxes in any year. Across the state, the number of districts without full-day kindergarten has been declining. In 1991, about 280 of the state's roughly 700 districts offered just half-day programs, according to Adele Bovard, the superintendent of Webster Central School District outside Rochester, who has analyzed this issue. Nationwide, according to recent census data, 76% of American kindergartners attend full-day programs, but the estimate does not account for how many hours constitute a full day, and that some families have to pay tuition for the second half of a kindergarten day, Melanie Hartzog, executive director of the Children's Defense Fund in New York, said. Mrs. Hartzog said most states require public schools to offer kindergarten, and several of them, including Arkansas, Oklahoma, and South Carolina, require children to attend it on a full-day basis equivalent to the time they would spend in first grade. But New York is one of the 5 states where school districts are not required to offer any kindergarten. The districts offering half-day kindergarten typically cope by offering less instruction in science, social studies, art, and music, and not having lunch and recess, which offers opportunities for socializing. The core topics of math and reading, too, are compressed, just as students are facing new, more rigorous Common Core standards. It will cost an estimated $77 million to bring full-day kindergarten to all districts now offering only half-day programs, Elizabeth Lyman, Director of State Studies at the Citizens Budget Commission, said. Though the governor's budget includes a 4% increase in state spending on schools to nearly $22 billion, Mr. Cuomo, who is running for re-election this year, frequently notes that New York already is among the top spenders per student on education. He is also loath to raise taxes and has opposed Mr. de Blasio's request for an income tax on high-earning New York City residents to pay for pre-kindergarten. The mayor has argued that a tax is a more reliable source of money than counting on the governor to fund it each year. As for kindergarten, decisions about how many hours to offer are local ones, the governor's office said, and subject to demands and other factors. This is not a funding issue, it is an implementation issue, Matthew Wing, a spokesman for the governor, said. When James W. Polanski, 48, arrived as superintendent in Huntington in 2011, the full-day kindergarten program was being eliminated for financial reasons. Huntington is the kind of suburb families move to specifically for the schools, and the howls for parents have not stopped. Of the district's $115 million budget last year, nearly $99 million came from property taxes, with most of the rest coming from the state. The local teachers union has agreed to a 1-year wage freeze to help the cause, Mr. Polanski said, and the district hopes to put a budget before voters in May that would allow 8 additional kindergarten teachers to be hired so the system can go back to full-day programming. You have now reached the end of this task.